So our family includes my husband, Matt, and myself, Kelly, and we have 3 boys. The oldest one is Thomas, and he's 12. He's in 6th grade this year, so we'll be moving on to middle school next year. And then we have a 6-year-old Kermit, and he's in kindergarten this year. And then Patrick is our youngest. He's 3, and he attends preschool 5 mornings a week this year. Once Patrick came along, we already had our family established, already had 2 children, we were already very busy. Of course, once he came along, work went by the wayside, had to stay home with the kids, and just started going to a lot of doctor appointments, having to juggle doctor appointments and juggle his hospital stays, along with keeping the other 2 kids in a somewhat normal life, having them still be able to go to school and have activities and have friends. And do things that normal kids do. That was probably our biggest struggle, finding time for all 3 of them. Patrick was born with congenital nephrotic syndrome, which affects your kidneys, and so he's born with 2 kidneys, but they were both diseased from the beginning. They both had to be removed within his first year, and he went on dialysis, and then it took him about 2 years before he got a transplant, and he just had a transplant about a year ago. So given that Patrick was so young and his abdomen needed to be big enough to accommodate a kidney, they would not even consider doing a transplant until he was 2. So we had to be on dialysis and just kind of wait for him to grow. So there's 2 kinds of dialysis. There's hemodialysis, where you actually will go to a dialysis center, and it kind of looks similar to giving blood. So blood, they're transferring your blood out, cleaning it with a machine, and putting it back in. But given that it's not really would be very feasible for children, and hemodialysis can only be done every couple days, and kids need something more consistent. So Patrick got what was called peritoneal dialysis, where they put a catheter into his abdomen, and the catheter then we would hook up to a machine that we had at home. So every night he was hooked up to the machine for 12 hours. And the machine would pump essentially a sugar fluid, into his abdomen. The solution then goes around in the body, in the cavity, and absorbs fluid and waste. And then it cycles through and pulls it back out. So it was a pretty convenient thing to have, for a kid, and it's also much healthier because it's more consistent. We could see, between the time he woke up and was done with dialysis and 12 hours later when we're ready to hook him back up again, he would have increased. He looks like he's gained weight, but essentially he's just gained fluid throughout the day. So to have a child be able to go several days, it would not be very healthy for them. At that point, he was completely on formula, on Pediasure. So at night he actually would have 2 tubes hooked up. He had his feed pump on one end and his dialysis machine on the other. And
so it was by G-tube, not by mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by G-tube. And so he's getting fluid in one way and it's going in and out this other way, which made it difficult for any movement. It would tangle. But luckily at that point he did not move very much at all. So, in the meantime, we actually did put him on the list to receive a transplant. We did a regional list. He happened to be lucky enough to get a kidney from Fairfax Hospital, so it was a very quick transfer. Lists in general are done on a point system. So the younger you are, you get more points. The less health problems you have, you get more points. So if you only need 1 organ, you're going to get more points as opposed to if you need several organs. So those people who are healthier, have a better chance of survival, or younger will actually get organs sooner. So we expected to wait about a year. We ended up having to wait about 2 years, simply because of his health and going through some issues. But once we got the call on a Friday morning, and it was just a normal day for me, but they said that they were ready to go and had an organ for him, and so we drove over to the hospital, had to be there within 45 minutes. And it was kind of, took several hours to get him ready and in the OR and whatnot, but he was transplanted within 12 hours of getting the call. And he was actually transplanted within 14 hours of them removing the organ. from the deceased donor. So it's a very quick process. So Patrick was only received one kidney, which is standard. We only actually need one kidney to live. That's why people can donate a kidney to a relative. So Patrick received a kidney from a deceased donor. We expect that organ to last probably about 8 to 10 years. So hopefully it will get him through to junior high. And at that point, he'll go into kidney failure again and start dialysis while he waits for a new organ. And but every generation of organs that are transplanted are lasting longer and longer because they're getting better at how they transplant them, how they preserve them once they remove them from the donors, and the drugs that they're using, the anti-rejection drugs and other drugs they're using over the life of the organ. So we're hoping that it can, each generation that he gets of kidney, that will last a little bit longer. The recovery, the first week was very difficult. They have to keep the kidney very perfused. This is a kidney that was used to being in a 15-year-old male who was very healthy, so it was used to having a lot of fluid. And then it went into Patrick, who does not eat or drink. So we had to keep him pumped full of fluids, and ended up at one point it was so much fluid that his stitches had opened, so he had to be re-sewn up in the OR during that first week. After the first week, he did start to sit up and move around a little bit and seemed a little bit more comfortable. And by the time he got to the second week, he was definitely much more mobile and seemed much stronger. We saw a great increase in his mobility and even in his thinking. It was as if he had kind of woken up. By 6 weeks, he was able to walk unassisted, and he was saying more words than he ever had, putting together some phrases.
By that time he was
2.5. And the big thing at 6 weeks was he started to eat, started to ask for food. Patrick had a G-tube when he was, during that first week of life, he got an NG-tube, and within 4 weeks he had a G-tube because he had no interest or energy or desire to eat or drink anything. So being at 6 weeks post-transplant to be able to eat and drink was amazing.
So what can he eat by mouth now?
He mostly eats more soft foods. He does have some trouble with chewing and with different textures. But he is big on yogurt and fruits, softer foods, cereals, that kind of thing. He's still not into drinking water, which would be nice if he was. We have to give him a lot of water. But he is into orange juice, so that has been good.
Do you give him liquids through his G-tube?
We do. He has to have 30 extra ounces of water a day. Which, even for my other kids would be a lot of water, so that does go into his G-tube, as well as his medications. Patrick has to have 11 doses right now a day of medication, so all of that goes into the G-tube. So that will be one of the struggles once we get him even eating, will be to get him to drink enough water and to take his meds orally. I think what Patrick has done the most for me is the strength that he's given me. I have days now that I can't believe that I've ever made it through. I feel like I would have probably withered up and died or crawled into a hole somewhere prior to him being born. Just being able to multitask, being able to juggle 3 cranky kids in a doctor's office for 2 hours, and juggle everybody's activities. Has been a big benefit for me. I feel like super mom sometimes.
What kind of activities what's a typical day?
Lots of chauffeuring, having to get up and get Patrick up in time in order to get him in one of his feeds before the bus comes, and get his meds in as well. getting him ready. I think every special needs kid takes a little bit longer to get ready and get dressed. I can't, just tell him to go pick out his clothes and get dressed. I have to lead him through every activity. Even brushing his teeth takes a long time. If I go anywhere different, going on a vacation could be a nightmare because then I'm off of my routine. I don't know where everything is. Patrick does have a lot of doctor appointments. He has to get labs regularly to make sure that his body is balanced, and that we can prevent, him having any hospital visits. Requires a lot of having to be out of school, which right now isn't as bad, but that is something that we worry about as he gets into elementary school, and then in particular in the junior high and high school. We do worry about him missing too much school for all the appointments that he has to have. We want him to be as typical a kid as he can. He wants to be just like everybody else. He wants to be just like his brothers. Missing too much school, not only is he not learning and developing as much, but, the other kids, do notice his absence, and he does realize I think occasionally when he gets back to school that they have done stuff without him. Always very type A and organized. I've had to be even more so. It's all about lists and systems. I feel like, every time we have a new med we have to do. They change the time on it. If all of a sudden you have a 2 p.m. med, I have to have a new system to figure out how to remember to give him that med. Or every time you go from, say 4 feedings a day to 3, you have to figure out a new system so that you make sure you're remembering to do that. Constantly writing things on my hand, constantly looking at the calendar, setting up reminders. It's just all about organization to keep everybody where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be, and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So my advice for new therapists would be to keep in mind that your plan for that appointment that day may not pan out. You may end up with a kid who is too tired, too weak, not well enough on the inside to be working on the outside. On those days, work on mom. Mom might need just as much therapy as the kid. It's a good time to just talk and give some homework on how, mom can be implementing, the therapy. Or working on resources, that the parents are needing to help their child. I think therapists need to wear many hats, and one of the hats that they really could wear to help parents out is to be a good resource for them, helping them find other resources throughout the community. Being a special needs parent can be very isolating. Sometimes you don't have a lot of connections to outside world, and to let them know what's out there, where they can take their child to interact with other people, how they can get out there.
Get it, Patrick! Get it! Get it! Get it! Oh, you got it! Go get that slipper, Patrick! Go get it! Get your elbow!
I tried to be chill, but you're so hot that I'm melting. I fell right through the cracks. Now I'm trying to get back before the cool done run out. I'll be giving it my bestest, and nothing's gonna stop me but divine intervention. I reckon it's again my turn to win some more, learn some, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait. I'm yours. I am yours. Hey, hey, you best believe I'm yours. Now open up your mind and see like me. Open up your plans and damn, you're free. Look into your heart and you'll find love, 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 love. Listen to the music of the moment, people dance and sing. We're just one big family, and it's our God-forsaken right to be loved, love, 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 love. So I won't hesitate.